My stomach twisted, a cold knot tightening with every beat of my heart. I was 18, barely an adult, and my entire world had just imploded. Damien, the alpha heir, the future leader of our powerful Ashwood pack, my fated mate, had publicly cast me aside. His words, sharp and clear, cut through the stunned silence of the mating ceremony. For the prosperity of the pack, the alliance must stand. The alliance meant Isabella, the Frostclaw Alpha's daughter, standing tall and smug beside him. Her triumphant stare met mine across the shocked faces in the crowd. Me. I was just Maya, a servant, a nobody, a discarded dream. Hey everyone, if you're hooked already, you're in for a wild ride. We're just getting started on I'm pregnant by the alpha who rejected me. And trust me, the twists and turns ahead are absolutely massive. If you're enjoying the story so far, hit that like button, drop a comment, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss part 2, because you will want to know what happens next. Your engagement truly helps us bring more incredible stories like this to life, so thank you for your support. My legs felt like lead, heavy and numb, but somehow they carried me away from the mating ceremony. Away from the whispers and stares that felt like physical blows. The sacred bond, the one meant to weave two souls together forever, felt like a cruel cosmic joke. Just a few weeks before, that bond had surged between Damien and me during a night that felt stolen from a dream. It was forbidden, intoxicating, a desperate embrace of a future I barely dared to imagine. I, foolish and longing for acceptance, had clung to that impossible hope. Now it tasted like ash. I ran until my lungs screamed, until the familiar scent of the Ashwood pack lands faded behind me. The comforting smell of pine and damp earth was replaced by the raw, untamed air of the deep forest, a wilderness that felt as broken as I was. Days blurred into a haze of grief and confusion. I survived on instinct, catching small game like rabbits and squirrels, finding shelter in rough, hidden caves. My heart felt like a shattered thing, sharp fragments tearing at my chest with every beat. The vast Appalachian Mountains, stretching across states like West Virginia and North Carolina, became my only refuge. I learned to tell edible plants from poisonous ones, a crucial skill for survival. I tracked deer by their faint prints in the damp earth, and learned to build a fire even with wet wood. My human senses sharpened, trying to make up for the wolf I still struggled to fully call upon. My body, thin from hunger and hardship, grew lean and strong, hardened by the constant fight to just keep going. Then the morning sickness started, a wave of nausea so powerful it stole my breath, making my head spin. At first, I blamed it on the stress, the fear, the poor diet. But denial slowly fought with a cold, creeping dread until I finally accepted the impossible truth. I was pregnant, Damien's child, the future Alpha's heir, conceived during that one reckless night before his public betrayal. The implications hit me like a physical punch. A servant-class wolf cast aside, carrying the future Alpha's pup. The proud, traditional Ashwood pack would never accept it. They'd see it as a scandal, a stain on their pure bloodline, a desperate attempt by a rejected female to cling to power. Isabella, Damien's chosen Luna, would make sure my life, and the life of my child, would be a living hell. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk him. The thought of my unborn child facing the same scorn, the same public humiliation I had just endured, was unbearable. I vowed right then and there that this child, my child, would never know the pain of rejection. He would know only love, safety, and acceptance. So I vanished. I left behind everything I knew, my pack, my past, my shattered dreams, to protect the tiny spark of life growing within me. My journey was long and hard. I traveled eastward, putting as much distance as possible between myself and Ashwood. I avoided human towns and established wolf territories, guided only by a desperate instinct to survive and a fierce, growing protectiveness for my baby. I learned to move silently through the thick undergrowth, to sleep with one ear to the ground, always listening, and to distrust every unfamiliar scent. Every rustle in the leaves, every distant howl, made my heart jump. When my strength flagged, when despair threatened to swallow me whole, I'd remember the golden eyes of my mate, the phantom warmth of his skin against mine, and the silent, growing promise of the life I carried. I clung to the hope that, somewhere out there, a new future awaited us. A future where my child could be safe, accepted, and proud, regardless of his father's choices. My path eventually led me across the vast expanse of the country, all the way to the Silver Moon Pack, nestled deep within the ancient forests and rugged coastlines of the Pacific Northwest. This pack was a stark contrast to the rigid, old-fashioned ways of Ashwood. They were powerful and strategically brilliant, known not just for their strength, but for their resilience and their surprising acceptance of outsiders. They didn't care for bloodlines or titles as much as they cared for strength of spirit and contribution. Here, among these forward-thinking wolves, I began to heal, to rebuild, and to slowly, unknowingly, become the Luna I was always meant to be. My unique abilities, which had started to show faintly after conception, were not seen as a threat, but as a valuable gift. I discovered I could subtly influence emotions, a skill that proved incredibly useful in smoothing over arguments and mediating disputes within the pack. More surprisingly, I could occasionally perceive weak points in a pack's defenses, a strategic intuition that proved invaluable during skirmishes with rogue wolf factions or human hunters. It was here, among these wolves who valued true strength beyond where you came from, that I began to understand my own power. The Silver Moon Pack was led by a wise old alpha, a grizzled wolf named Lysander, whose fur was as gray as a winter storm but whose eyes held a sharp, knowing light. He saw my potential, not just as a mate, but as a leader. He trained me, not just in pack management and diplomacy, but in honing my latent abilities. He taught me how to channel my wolf's power, how to lead with fairness, and how to fight with cunning. He instilled in me a quiet ferocity that belied my past. He taught me about managing pack resources, about forging alliances with neighboring packs through trust, and about keeping my heart both open and guarded in a world full of dangers. He became the mentor I desperately needed, a father figure who believed in me when no one else had. And by my side through it all was Caleb, the pack beta. He was strong, kind, and steady, a constant presence as my belly swelled and our son, Elias, came into the world. Caleb was the one who held my hand during labor, who stayed with me through the long hours, offering quiet encouragement. He was the one who first cradled Elias, his gentle hands supporting our tiny son. And he became, in every sense of the word, Elias's father. He taught Elias to hunt, to track, and to understand the ways of the wolf. He taught him responsibility, loyalty, and the joy of a true pack. Elias, with his striking golden eyes, a trait that always made my heart clench with a mix of pride and a lingering, quiet pain, grew into a powerful, confident young wolf, already radiating the unmistakable aura of an alpha. He was Caleb's son in every way that mattered. Caleb's love for Elias was unconditional, a fierce, protective bond that anchored our small family. As Elias grew, so did my power, and so did the Silver Moon Pack's influence. Our strategic brilliance in trade, our fair justice system, and our formidable military prowess became known far and wide. We became known across the region, not just for our strength in battle, but for our clever thinking and our fresh approach to pack governance. Our training methods were unorthodox but highly effective, focusing on adaptability and individual strengths, rather than rigid traditions. I, Maya, the once rejected servant, became the feared female alpha of the Silver Moon Pack, a force to be reckoned with. Wolves from far and wide sought refuge and training within our borders, drawn by our reputation for fairness and strength. The Ashwood Pack, for all its pride and political alliances, had stagnated. Their rigid traditions and focus on bloodline over merit had weakened them from within. Their old alpha had grown complacent, more concerned with appearances than true leadership, and even with their Frostclaw alliance, they lacked true innovation and spirit. Now the Silver Moon Pack, a living testament to resilience and adaptation, stood as the most formidable force in the region, a beacon of modern pack philosophy. Then the whispers started, tales of an ancient evil stirring, a predator unlike any other. The ancient vampire clan had re-emerged from the shadows, their hunger insatiable. These weren't the common, territorial vampires sometimes found near human cities. This was the Bloodfang clan, a lineage thought to be extinct, rumored to possess dark, primal magic that made them incredibly dangerous. They weren't just hunting wolves, they were specifically targeting alpha bloodlines, systematically culling leaders, destabilizing packs, and throwing the entire supernatural world into chaos. Their goal was clear: to destabilize the wolf world, break our inherent order, and then move in to establish their own dominion, turning us into their cattle. The Ashwood pack, weakened and vulnerable, had been hit hard. Their alpha, Damien's father, barely survived a brutal attack that decimated half their warrior force, leaving him gravely ill and unable to lead. The message was clear: unite or die. A frantic summons went out across all wolf territories, a desperate plea for a grand council, an alliance of last resort, to meet at a neutral ground. And so, after 18 long years, I found myself heading back. Not as a fleeing, heartbroken girl, but as the powerful Luna of the Silver Moon Pack, leading my forces to a hastily arranged council of desperate alphas. We traveled for days, crossing state lines and old territorial boundaries. The air crackled with tension as our convoy approached the neutral territory, a vast plain where ancient standing stones marked sacred ground. Ashwood pack banners, faded and torn, waved alongside others from smaller, less prominent territories like the Pine Ridge and the Riverbend packs, their colors looking dull next to ours. And in the center, flying high, catching the wind, was the proud, shimmering banner of the Silver Moon. My banner. It was a visual declaration of our strength, a symbol of everything I had become. I dismounted my horse, a magnificent black mare named Obsidian, Elias a formidable presence beside me. He moved with the effortless grace of a seasoned warrior, his golden eyes scanning the gathering with inherited alpha awareness. He was nearly as tall as I was, radiating a strength that belied his 17 years, a strength that made other wolves instinctively take notice and step back. My beta, Caleb, walked on my other side, his hand resting on the hilt of his hunting knife, his gaze unwavering, always watchful. He was my rock, my confidant, and the only daddy Elias had ever known. We cut a striking figure, a testament to the strength and unity of the Silver Moon Pack, a stark contrast to the desperate fear clinging to the other packs like a shroud. Then I saw him. Damien. He stood among the Ashwood ranks, older now, lines of weariness etched around his once arrogant eyes. His dark hair was streaked with silver at the temples, a sign of the burdens he now carried as interim alpha, leading his pack in his ailing father's stead. But even 18 years couldn't erase the sharp angles of his face, the commanding presence that still drew the eye. And those eyes, they were scanning the approaching packs, assessing, calculating, until they landed on Elias. For a fleeting moment, Damien's confident posture faltered. His gaze lingered on Elias's golden eyes, a rare trait only found in his direct lineage, a recessive gene that marked true Ashwood alpha blood. He looked from Elias's eyes to my face, then back to Elias's. The truth, undeniable and shocking, slammed into him. I felt it, a raw, naked shock passing through him that was so profound it almost buckled my knees. He knew. He saw his lineage, his mistake, staring back at him in the form of a powerful young man he had no claim over. Elias, still a bit innocent to the deeper meaning, simply tightened his grip on my hand, his golden eyes meeting Damien's with a curious, almost challenging intensity. The air between us thrummed with unspoken history and the weight of a secret 18 years old. The council began in a tense, cavernous hall within the neutral territory, a site chosen for its ancient magic that traditionally prevented hostilities between warring packs. Alphas from dozens of desperate packs sat around a massive stone table, their faces grim with the weight of recent losses and the looming threat. The scent of fear, desperation, and old animosities hung heavy in the air. Damien, now the acting alpha of Ashwood, led the discussion. His voice, once smooth and commanding, was rough with exhaustion as he detailed the vampire clan's systematic attacks on alpha bloodlines. "They're hunting us down pack by pack," he stated, his gaze sweeping the room, lingering for a fraction of a second on Elias. Their goal is total annihilation of leadership, to plunge the wolf world into chaos and claim it as their own. The statistics he cited were chilling, confirming the devastating losses suffered by even the largest and most established packs, including his own. He spoke of decimated warrior forces, the loss of ancient lore keepers, and the fear that gripped even the bravest. My wolf stirred within me, a cold, focused fury replacing the long-buried pain. This wasn't about Damien anymore. This was about survival. Elias sat beside me, his hand resting on his knee, his eyes fixed on Damien with an unnerving stillness. He was absorbing every word, every nuance of the desperate conversation, his own alpha instincts already asserting themselves. He asked pointed questions about the vampire's tactics and vulnerabilities, impressing even the grizzled veterans around the table with his sharp mind and strategic insights. Caleb sat on my other side, a silent, unwavering pillar of support. He was the only one who knew the full truth of Elias's lineage, and his quiet protective presence was a constant reminder of the family we had built, far away from Ashwood's judgment. He'd occasionally meet Damien's gaze, a subtle, almost imperceptible challenge in his eyes, a warning to the past, a protection for our present. As the meeting progressed, Isabella, Damien's Luna, arrived, sweeping into the hall with a forced air of grace. Her shimmering silver gown, a symbol of her high status, seemed out of place amidst the grim faces. She was as beautiful as ever, but her eyes held a brittle desperation I hadn't seen before. I noted the way she carefully avoided Elias's golden gaze, and how a flicker of something sharp, fear perhaps, or a possessive rage born of insecurity, crossed her features when Damien glanced at my son. Isabella's barrenness was an open secret among the packs, a constant source of quiet whispers and immense pressure for the Ashwood heir. Elias's very existence, a powerful, undeniable alpha heir, was a profound threat to her precarious position and her desperate, primal need to secure her own future and legacy within the pack. Her gaze upon me was venomous, a silent promise of future conflict. She was a cornered animal, and that made her dangerous. The true conflict cascade began subtly, simmering beneath the surface of the vampire crisis. During a tense discussion about defensive strategy, an elder from a smaller, less influential pack hesitantly brought up the topic of succession. Alpha Damien, the elder began, his voice wavering, the vampire attacks, they leave packs vulnerable without a clear line of leadership. Your pack, especially, has suffered great losses, and with respect, your Luna has yet to produce an heir. The words hung in the air, a thinly veiled question about Ashwood's future. Isabella stiffened, her hand clenching at her side, her knuckles white. Damien's jaw tightened, his gaze darting to Elias, then to me. The ancient pack laws, a bedrock of werewolf society, were clear. An alpha's firstborn son was the rightful heir, even if born outside a sanctioned union, especially if that son carried the undeniable marks of a pure bloodline. Elias, with his undeniable golden eyes and powerful aura, was living proof of that law, a living challenge to Damien's public rejection. The room fell silent, every eye now on Elias, then on me. The power dynamics had irrevocably shifted. The once mighty Ashwood pack, proud of its long, unbroken line, now looked to a rejected mate and her formidable son for their future. The irony was almost palatable. Damien, once the arrogant future alpha who held my fate in his hands, now found himself desperate. He desperately needed Silver Moon's strength to survive the vampire threat, and more subtly, he was beginning to recognize the profound, irreplaceable connection to the son he'd denied for so long. He'd lost everything that truly mattered, a true mate, a powerful heir, and perhaps a genuine chance at happiness, and the realization was a bitter pill. He found himself looking at Elias with an almost raw longing, a primal desire to claim what was rightfully his, to mend the broken lineage, to restore what he had so carelessly discarded. But Elias, fiercely loyal, complicated matters further. During a tense joint training session aimed at integrating our pack's fighting styles, Elias executed a complex maneuver, easily disarming a seasoned Ashwood warrior. He displayed incredible strength and tactical brilliance, his movements fluid and powerful. "That's my boy," Caleb roared from the sidelines, pride radiating from him, a sound that echoed with genuine love. Elias, flushed with success, grinned and ran straight to Caleb, wrapping his arms around him in a tight embrace. "Good job, Daddy," he exclaimed, completely at ease, a natural affection in his voice, completely ignoring the stunned Ashwood crowd. Damien, standing nearby, his expression a mask of forced neutrality, flinched almost imperceptibly. I felt a sharp pang of satisfaction. This was the reality of his loss. Caleb had been there for every scraped knee, every first shift, every proud moment. He was Elias's daddy, and that bond was stronger than any biological claim. It was a constant, undeniable reminder of what Damien had thrown away, a wound he couldn't hide. He frequently tried to offer Elias advice, a training tip, or a strategic observation, but Elias would almost always defer to Caleb, a subtle but firm rejection that cut Damien deep, highlighting his outsider status in Elias's life, a painful mirror of my own past rejection. The forced proximity of our alliance meant frequent, unavoidable interactions. We spent hours in strategy sessions, our shoulders occasionally brushing as we leaned over maps of vampire strongholds and defensive positions, discussing vulnerabilities and strategies. During joint patrols in the sprawling, ancient forests bordering our territories, our wolves ran side by side, their instincts harmonizing in a way that made my skin prickle with an uncomfortable awareness. The sexual tension was a low, constant hum beneath the surface, a testament to our still potent fated mate bond, a silent, undeniable pull that defied logic and history. Sometimes in the quiet of the night, when the pack was asleep and only the sentries stood guard, I'd feel his gaze on me, heavy with unspoken things, and my heart would thump a rapid rhythm against my ribs, betraying the cool facade I maintained. One particularly grueling vampire skirmish highlighted the escalating emotional stakes and tested the fragile alliance between our packs. We were battling a particularly vicious coven, their movements blurring, their fangs glinting in the moonlight. Elias, courageous and strong, had taken a position on the flank, leading a small unit and drawing the attention of 3 powerful vampires. He fought with incredible ferocity, a blur of golden-eyed power, but they were ancient, coordinated, overwhelming him with their speed and dark magic. "Elias!" My own alpha roar tore from my throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated primal fear. I saw one vampire lunge, fangs bared, at my son's exposed neck. A raw, blinding terror seized me. My unique power, the ability to subtly command other alphas, surged uncontrollably. For a split second, the vampire, an ancient, powerful male, froze mid-lunge, its mind momentarily open to my unexpected psychic command, its movements halted against its will. It was enough. Damien, a blur of raw power, was there in an instant, tackling the vampire away from Elias with a savage growl. He fought with a desperate, primal fury, his black wolf a terrifying whirlwind of fangs and claws. I felt his overwhelming protective instincts through our faint bond, a powerful current of pure, raw paternal love that ripped through my carefully constructed walls, leaving them shattered. In that moment, watching him defend our son, the old pain flared, replaced by a devastating wave of what if. What if he hadn't rejected me? What if we had faced the world together, as a family, as fated mates? The question was a physical ache in my chest. Later, after the skirmish, in the dim light of the emergency medical tent, the air thick with the scent of antiseptic and wolfsbane, I found myself sitting beside Elias, whose minor wounds were being tended by Caleb. Damien entered, his gaze immediately going to Elias, then to me, a silent, desperate question in his eyes. His face was streaked with blood and dirt, a gash on his own arm seeping crimson, but his eyes, golden and intense, were fixed on my son. A quiet conversation began, Elias recounting the fight with youthful bravado, Caleb gently reassuring him and applying salve to a superficial bite. Damien stood apart, a silent sentinel, his presence radiating a desperate need to be closer, to be part of this family unit that had formed without him. "He's good," Caleb said, looking at Elias, a warmth in his voice that spoke volumes of their shared history and Caleb's deep affection for the boy. Fought like a true alpha, Maya. You've raised him well. Damien's jaw worked. He always had that fire, he murmured, his gaze still on Elias. He glanced at me, a silent, almost pleading question in his eyes, a desperate longing for me to acknowledge his shared lineage, his contribution. I felt a sharp pang of jealousy. Not for Isabella, surprisingly, but for Caleb. He was the one Elias looked to for praise, the one he ran to after a victory, the one who truly held the daddy title. And for Damien, the sight of Caleb's easy familiarity with Elias, their shared laughter, their comfortable intimacy, was a constant, gnawing torment. He'd occasionally try to offer Elias advice, a training tip, or a strategic observation, but Elias would almost always defer to Caleb, a subtle but firm rejection that cut Damien deep, highlighting his outsider status in Elias's life, a painful mirror of my own past rejection. The vulnerability of almost losing Elias had shaken me to my core. My carefully built emotional walls, which had served me for so long in exile, felt brittle, on the verge of crumbling. Later that night, unable to sleep, I walked to the edge of the Silver Moon territory within the neutral zone, the cool night air a balm on my fevered skin. I felt a presence behind me, then Damien's voice, low and weary, breaking the silence. "You were incredible out there," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. I saw your power. It nearly failed me," I admitted, my voice rough, raw with the lingering fear. "When he was in danger." My voice trailed off, the memory too potent, too terrifying. I felt his presence beside me, close, silent, a comforting weight in the darkness. "No parent should ever have to feel that," he said, his voice laced with an understanding that only a father, having faced similar fears, could possess. "The helplessness, the fear." I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with emotion. My eyes, still stinging with unshed tears from the fight, met his. The moon was high, casting silver light on his face, illuminating the raw pain in his eyes, a reflection of my own, a shared wound of parental terror. For the first time since his rejection, I saw not the arrogant alpha, not the political puppet, but a man haunted by loss, burdened by profound regret, capable of a fierce, protective love. And in that shared vulnerability, a fragile bridge began to form between us, an echo of the bond that had once seemed irrevocably broken. The air crackled with unspoken words, with the weight of years, with the undeniable pull of our fated connection. I felt the warmth of his presence, the primal hum of his wolf recognizing mine. My own wolf stirred, a soft, purring acknowledgement, a longing I hadn't realized I still held. The crisis continued, forcing our packs to train together, fight together, bleed together against the escalating vampire threat. The unity, born of desperation, was slowly becoming something real, a testament to what we could achieve when old animosities were set aside. But the internal conflicts intensified. Isabella, increasingly desperate, her position as Luna feeling ever more tenuous, became more brazen in her attempts to assert her dominance and undermine my position. She'd spread subtle rumors among the Ashwood pack, questioning Elias's true loyalty to their ancestral bloodline, hinting that he was more Silver Moon than Ashwood, more Caleb's son than Damien's heir. She even tried to orchestrate accidents during joint training sessions, though my heightened senses and Damien's increasingly watchful eye and protective stance always prevented real harm. Her desperation was clear, a dangerous animal caught in a trap. The vampires, relentless and cunning, had discovered a critical weakness in our joint defenses. The sacred Moonstone Caves, a vital nexus of pack energy, and a place where our unique alpha bloodlines derived some of their deepest power. It was here, during a final decisive stand against the ancient vampire clan, that the ultimate confrontation would occur. The Moonstone Caves, revered for centuries, were a place of both immense power and profound vulnerability. The air vibrated with primal energy, the scent of fear and defiance mingling with the metallic tang of vampire magic and the ancient dust of the cavern. The battlefield within the caves was chaotic, a wild fight of fur, fangs, and ancient bloodlust. Our combined packs fought with desperate courage, a unified front against a common enemy. But the vampires were strong, their numbers seemingly endless, their attacks precise and deadly. Damien and I fought side by side, our wolves a blur of dark and silver, our bond a seamless channel for shared strategy and power, a terrifyingly effective partnership. Elias, strong and fearless, cut a path through the enemy ranks, his golden eyes blazing with inherited alpha fire, a warrior born. Then, in the thick of the brutal fighting, a chilling scent reached me. Isabella. She wasn't fighting vampires. She was stalking, moving silently through the chaos, a dangerous gleam in her eyes that was far more disturbing than any vampire's hunger. She was moving with careful thought, her eyes fixed on Elias. My blood ran cold. She had chosen this moment, this desperate battle, to eliminate him, to sever the last threat to her Luna status, to secure her place in Ashwood. A flash of silver gleamed in her hand, a ceremonial blade, typically used for rituals, but now laced with wolfsbane, meant to nullify a shifter's power, to ensure a swift, silent death. She lunged not at a vampire, but at Elias, who was momentarily distracted, battling two ancient bloodsuckers, his back exposed. "Elias! Behind you!" I roared, my voice raw with terror, pushing a surge of protective power through our bond to Damien. He caught my mental cry, his head snapping towards his son, his eyes widening in horror as he saw Isabella's intent. Isabella was upon Elias, her eyes alight with a desperate, frantic glee. The blade arced downwards, a deadly whisper through the air, aimed for his heart. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. Elias was too focused, too caught up, to react in time, his attention consumed by the vampires before him. My power swelled, pushing at the limits of my control. I could try to force Isabella to stop, to halt her in her tracks, but the distraction in the midst of such a fierce battle could cost us dearly, perhaps even cost Elias his life if he were left exposed. Damien, however, was closer. He saw the blade, saw Isabella's murderous intent. He saw his son, the child he had rejected, the heir he was now desperate to claim, utterly vulnerable. He had a choice: protect the Luna he was publicly bound to, Isabella, and maintain the fragile political peace, or save the son and true mate he had denied for so long, and shatter everything. The survival of his pack, his legacy, his very soul, rested on this single brutal decision. The air crackled with tension, the fate of all three of us hanging in the balance, suspended over the bloody chaos of the Moonstone Caves. Damien's powerful body became a blur. He launched himself forward, a desperate roar tearing from his throat, placing himself directly in Isabella's path, between her poisoned blade and our son. The glinting silver plunged. My heart stopped, and for the first time in 18 years, the formidable Alpha Luna Maya felt nothing but the paralyzing, ice-cold grip of absolute terror. This is just the beginning of Maya's story, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The consequences of this choice will echo through their lives, forever changing the dynamics of love, loyalty, and power. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell, so you're ready when the part 2 drops, because the future of the Pax and a fractured family hangs by a thread.